So let me break this down so you can understand the severity of what I'm trying to say. Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So I know I'm getting a little abrupt about this, but I'm really excited to talk about this, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Ever since I started incorporating aspects of body positivity into my life, which I talked about in my last video, I'll put the link down below if you want to watch that video as well. But ever since I started incorporating aspects of body positivity into my life back in 2017, there was one phrase that kept being thrown around and I wasn't really sure what it meant, so I had to go and do my own research about it, and that term is fatphobia. Now, a lot of people's initial definition of fatphobia, including mine, was that it's just the literal fear of fat people. I always compare that initial definition to this episode of Family Guy in which Lois discovers that she has a brother who is a serial killer for fat people. He is so terrified of fat people that he is going to kill any fat person that he sees. And this is so extreme, and it wouldn't be fair to blame Family Guy for causing fat phobia as it is today. They're just making fun of society as it is. But the thing is, a lot of people take that extreme depiction of fat phobia and they compare it to themselves, and they say, oh, I'm not afraid of fat people, they're just people, so I can't be fat phobic. What we don't realize is that fat phobia is so intertwined with our culture and our society. It is a part of so many things that we have learned from past generations and what we have taught in future generations. It affects our lives more than we think it does. When I realized this, I decided to do more research on where it comes from and in what ways does it affect us and our society. Disclaimer, I am not a professional of any kind. I am just somebody that is really passionate about this topic. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to inspire other people to do their own research about it, and I wanted to spark conversations. Maybe our conversations can create something bigger than ourselves that can bring positive change. Now, when talking about the origins of fat phobia, I am going to be referencing an amazing book called Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, and it is written by Sabrina. It is a fantastic book. I'm only going to be giving you the bite-sized version of this book. If this topic inspires you, I highly recommend reading this book. So I'm beginning this story all the way back to the Renaissance. Just to refresh your memory on what the Renaissance was. The Renaissance was this cultural revolution that occurred between the 14th century up until the 17th century. But this revolution in Europe occurred when people started to rely less on the church for answering all the questions in the universe. People wanted to find answers on their own through legitimate scientific evidence. This just didn't affect science and math, it affected art and philosophy as well. People wanted to see more realistic body types in art, and that's what they got. So the standard for women back then was for them to be more curvy, because that is what was normal for women to be. They were curvy, they were fat, and they were beautiful. They were beautiful because they were natural. They also painted people other than Jesus and Mary and any of the saints. They started painting pictures of Greek gods, and if you look at the many depictions of Venus during that time, she was often depicted as a voluptuous, beautiful, natural woman. Things started to change when slave trading began to increase in the 17th century. White Europeans didn't want to compare themselves to their black slaves, so they started creating stereotypes, and they created new social standards for white women to follow. They wanted white European women to be thinner and less curvy than their black slaves. And this social standard in Europe was created because of a horrible stereotype of black people, in which it says that black people have no self-control in any aspect of their life, and they are unable to take care of themselves. White Europeans even used this stereotype to tell the difference between a freed slave and a slave that was still in captivity. So let me break this down so you can understand the severity of what I'm trying to say. There was a social standard for white women to be thinner than their black slaves, and there was another social standard that freed slaves were fatter than slaves in captivity, because of the stereotype that black people were unable to take care of themselves without a white person owning them. That is such a ridiculously racist and disgusting stereotype and social standard to follow by. This is shocking, but not so much. Fatphobia just happens to be another plague that has escaped this Pandora's box, which we call racism. So one of the most inhumane acts that contributed to fat phobia and racism was that a lot of Black women at that time were put on display in these exhibits. I mean, I probably shouldn't call this an exhibit. I should call it the way it actually is. It's a freak show. These poor women were put on freak shows. They were put on these freak shows to prove this insane idea of scientific racism. For those who don't know what scientific racism is, it is this pseudoscience that is trying to prove that white people are biologically superior to any other race on the earth. And it often antagonizes Black people and compares them to apes, which again is very disgustingly racist. When I was researching these freak shows, I also saw the name Sahardi or Sarah Bartman come up a lot. Sahardi was one of these Black women that were used for these freak show exhibits because of her voluptuous body. And she was publicly referred to as Hottentot Venus because of her shape. And it is considered a racist term to this day. She was presented to white Europeans as if she was a wild animal, and even when she passed away, they still used her body in exhibits. Her body was not even laid to rest until 2002. That's almost 100 years since she passed away. Sahardi's life and the lives of many beautiful Black women were destroyed because of scientific racism, because of fat phobia. So now that I'm talking about fat phobia in our modern society, I am going to be referencing an article called Take the Cake, The 3 Levels of Fat Phobia, written by Virgie Tovar. Now, I discovered this article through an Instagram page called Teach Me Public Health. Teach Me Public Health is an amazing Instagram website in which they use research-based evidence on why certain social issues can also be considered as public health issues. So there's a post named The Need for Body Positivity, How Fat Phobia is a Public Health Issue. So according to Virgie Tovar, there are 3 levels of fat phobia. There are structural fat phobia, there is cultural fat phobia, and there is internalized fat phobia. Now, Teach Me Public Health did an amazing job summarizing this article with a little diagram. It is very right to the point, very informative, and it's really great. Now, structural fat phobia has to deal with the representation of just one perfect body type. And that leaves a lot of room for discrimination against any other body type. And this trickles down into cultural fat phobia, which has to deal with bullying, unsolicited weight loss advice. I mean, we've all been there. We've all been to a wonderful Christmas party and we've had lots of delicious food, and somebody out of nowhere starts to talk about losing weight as their New Year's resolution. And it really takes away the enjoyment from this one moment. Cultural fat phobia also includes the constant advertisements of weight loss products. That includes diet food, that includes pills. The purpose of these products are just to sell to people's insecurities. Your insecurities are capitalized upon, and different weight loss companies make millions and millions of dollars because of it. And the effects of cultural fat phobia trickles down into internalized fat phobia. That is how you feel about it and your personal bias and judgment against different body types. So because people have witnessed bullying and they have seen misrepresentation of different body types in the media, they turn towards themselves and they start to degrade themselves because of their body type. They devalue themselves. They start to believe that they are not worth being represented, and they create this bias and judgment against other people of other body types. Because of fat phobia, this leads people to not want to take care of themselves in the way that they should. This leads people to develop eating disorders and body dysmorphia because of the different types of fat phobia. Now, in conclusion, I just want to say that it doesn't make you a bad person or a racist or anything like that if you become manipulated by these fatphobic messages presented to you through the media. The negative connotation against different body types is a learned behavior. This is something that we have been doing for hundreds of years. And in order to understand the problem, we need to define it and we need to put ourselves in the picture and think about how we are contributing to this problem. So this concludes the first half of my fat phobia series or videos, whatever you like to call it. I want to make a second video about fat phobia in the medical profession. I don't think a lot of people talk about fat phobia in the medical profession because doctors are important people in our society, which I do agree, but I also agree that situations like this happen. So I want to take time to do research on this topic that is unbiased. So hopefully I can put a video like that together in another week or two. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for listening. I hope this video inspired you. Hopefully you learned something new today about fat phobia, maybe inspired you to look more into body positivity. I am always down for conversations in the comments. I love discussion. I love exchanging thoughts and opinions. I know I'm a bit of a nerd, but I love discussions and stuff like that. So again, thank you for watching this video, and I hope I see you soon. Goodbye!